الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear friends and family and all strangers watching this video on YouTube. My discussion today is a continuation of a topic that I've been dealing with for the past 3 episodes. I think we've done 2 episodes. And what we're dealing with is a particularly maybe depressing topic, but also an extremely vital and important topic which concerns the end of time and the fate of humanity, yours and my fate at the end of our lives and beyond. And those are heavy questions and those are heavy considerations. And, you know, in the privacy of your own room and on YouTube, maybe it's a more convenient opportunity to reflect on these things. Now, what I am basing my analysis on is on the Holy Quran. And if you're not a follower of the Quran, if you've never heard, or if you only think the Quran is something that has got a lot of violence and, negative things in, then I would beseech you, I would plead with you to not believe what you've heard, because that is not true. Particularly the section of the Quran that we're dealing with now, the Quran in its final part, which if we divide it up into parts, into 30 equal parts, the final 36 or so chapters are very short and punchy chapters. They're short, they're rhythmic, the language is different, and the language is quite unsettling, in fact, and it has a feel somewhat different from the rest of the Holy Quran. Just to put it in context, the final 36 chapters of the Quran, say from chapter 78 until 114, those chapters were revealed very early on in the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, in his mission. We know that from historical records and from our own historical sources, we know that the Prophet Muhammad appeared in Arabia somewhere late, and he was born late in the 6th century, the Christian century, the 6th century, so around about 570. And we know that around the age of 40, early in the 7th century, in 610, around about there, he started preaching a message. And this is recorded not only in Muslim sources but also in other sources of the time, Christian sources, in Roman sources. There's actually recording of the Arabian prophet that started preaching a sermon, and a very striking sermon. A sermon, they call it a sermon, but preaching a message with a very profound appeal to many people. And that early part of the preaching of the message and the sermon or the message or what he's been preaching is none other than his recital of the verses of the Quran. So we must stop what priests and holy men are trying to do, and that is to say that the Prophet preached a preaching or a message that was in parallel to the Quran. That's a big lie. The Prophet never preached a message alongside the Quran. The message that the Prophet preached was the Quran. The words that formed the basis of the Prophet's dialogue and his discourse were the words of the Quran. There was no prophetic sunnah. That's a lie, that's a made-up story. The sunnah, the message, the essence, the discourse, the law are the words of the Quran. There's only one message, and that is the words of the Quran. Now the Prophet would relate it to people because he would receive it from the angel Gabriel, but he would simply narrate it and add maybe clarification where there was maybe that was needed, and he would preach the way that these messages and rulings and laws should be applied. So he was concerned with the application and with the understanding, with the meaning of the words. But in no way was there a parallel prophetic tradition that has to support or contextualize the Quran. The Quran stands on its own, and we must just stop believing that you need to have a parallel, 500 books to understand each verse. That is untrue. The Quran is in Arabic. It is written in layman's Arabic. So the final 36 or so chapters of the Holy Book are extremely striking, and they do visit extensively the end of time, which is also covered in other chapters in the Holy Quran, but particularly in this final part 30, we deal with the end of times. Now it's important. I want to look at some of these verses with you. I want to give you some meaning of these verses, give you the Arabic and some English meaning. And the question that I want to answer at the heart of this episode is, what will happen after we die? How are we to be resuscitated? And that question we will deal with a bit later on. But as an introduction, and before we get to the verses, let me first say that Islam is not based on 5 pillars only. That is something. Also, another myth is that Islam is 5 pillars. And let me correct you there. Islam is very wide. The religion or the belief in the Almighty Creator of the universe is a very wide, comprehensive understanding. And it involves a few pillars, it involves a few core beliefs, it involves a few core practices, but ingrained in the core doctrine, in the core doctrinal being of being a Muslim. And you cannot be a Muslim without this core doctrinal understanding. At the very, very heart. In fact, without it, Islam doesn't make sense. The whole religion just falls apart. At the core, at the very essence, and I'm not talking about the belief in the Creator and the divine Lord and sustainer of the universe. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking more than that. More than that is that the concept of the final accountability. That is a concept that you cannot omit from the doctrine of Islam. Right? From being a Muslim and a mu'min, you cannot avoid and contradict and deny the idea of the final accountability. Final accountability is not in the realm of this world. The final accountability, I mean answering for yourself, answering for your deeds, and not answering for your deeds to your employer, to your parents, to your teacher, to the government. No. When I say answering for your deeds, I mean answering for your deeds to the universe, to the creator of the universe, to the world. Express becoming true to yourself and to the universe. So there is no escaping that accountability. Because in accounting to imperfect beings like the teacher and the government and your father and your employer, those are imperfect beings. Your accountability is limited. But in accounting to the ultimate creator, sustainer, master of the universe, your accountability is complete. There is no omissions. There is no shortcomings in your accountability. There is no overlooking anything. There is no sweeping under the carpet of anything. There is no fudging and speaking yourself into out of criminality. No sweet talk, no diplomacy, no sophistry, no fork tongue, nothing can get you out of that accountability. It is a form of accountability that is complete and whole and comprehensive. And that accountability will cover every aspect of your sane and conscious life. From the moment that you've reached the point of responsibility in your life, where you have emerged out of childhood and assumed consciousness and responsibility in terms of being a matured human being, until the day you died. That period of time you need to give account for. And you will need to give account for every voluntary decision that you had to take. So you will not be accountable for involuntary decisions and involuntary actions. And that is the accountability that is essential, core, fundamental to being a mu'min. And that is, of course, where we differ with a pagan. If you look at Western paganism today, which I regard America as the leader of Western paganism, the biggest flaw is not an absence of belief. People believe in all sorts of things. They believe in God. They worship God. They cry. They invent gods. They, believe in Allah. That is never the problem with the world. Is that there's been believers all that when the Prophet Muhammad appeared, the people were believers. They used to worship stones, and some of them worshiped the one God. The problem was not that you accept God Almighty. The problem is that you do not accept accountability for your actions. And that is why this discussion is so important, is that accountability is a core, essential, fundamental aspect of being a mu'min. Our iman, and the word iman means our core assertions, our core endorsements. That is, your iman is your core endorsements. My iman, my core endorsement, must not just say that there is a God, a nourisher, a sustainer of the universe, but my core endorsement, my core assertion, the comfortable an acceptance in my heart should be that there will also be an ultimate accounting for my actions. And that brings us then to the verses that I want to share with you. You see, these verses are reminding you and me about that day of accountability that is to come. In a previous episode, I explained to you how the world will end at the hand of scientific understanding, of this understanding that astronomers and cosmologists have, is that the earth will one day end, and that when the sun will in fact one day burn out, and that will cause a huge rise in temperatures of the sun, and it will cause catastrophic consequences for the earth, where the earth will eventually be devoid of life, and it will in fact, the mountains will dissipate, the atmosphere will cleave and dissipate and disappear into open space, and mankind will and the animals and everyone will become extinct. But then upon this extinction, a new event will occur. Because what we also know from when the earth will end is that the sun will become a red giant. It will become hundreds of times bigger than it is right now. And the earth will become a place, a hell, a place of hell. And then that is more or less where the previous episode stopped. Where this episode continues is to ask the question then, what happens to humanity? And according to the prophecy of the Holy Quran, the prophecy as put forward to us by the Master, the Creator of the universe, the book, the author of the Holy Quran, not Muhammad, the very author of the Quran says that at the end, when the earth has been terminated, those that were dead and in the ground buried or cremated or in whatever way lost their lives, something in them, a little trace of DNA, a trace of their code, of their being, will be used to regenerate a new corporeality, or new corpus or body. And from that body will be matched a record of information, a memory record of each person. So the corporeality and the information or the identity of each person will be merged, which will create a new emergence, a new iteration of you and me. So we will, in the extreme conditions of that time, a new version 2 of you and me will emerge. And that is the prophecy of these final chapters. Now let me show you a quick summary, and then we're going to deal with the verses. These chapters in 78:18, we're going to look at it now. It speaks about, and this is often repeated, so this idea of a massive horn or a siren is often mentioned. At the end of time, when the earth has been almost at the point of annihilation, a massive siren will give the signal, will send out a signal that will create a regeneration of the essence of all people. So let's say the world has had 10 billion people at that point. 10 billion entities will be activated. Right? The siren will reactivate whatever remnants there are in terms of genetic material or in terms of any other saved material on Earth or in space. It will be, the siren will spell the regeneration of those entities, those humans. And then the word that also comes up very often is the convulsion. And the convulsion is the sudden shaking. Now, people do say that the convulsion refers to the earth, but there are places where it does not state the earth. I mean, let's look at 79, 6 and 7. Let us just look at 79, 6 and 7. Because at 79, 6 and 7, it simply refers to the convulsion followed by a convulsion. And there we go. Here the verse says, يوم ترجف الراجفة يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبعها الرادفة. So real the day they experience the convulsion. I am applying the word convulsion here to the resuscitated body. So we have the siren, we have the convulsion, because convulsion is often associated with the human body. It is a sudden entry of life into a corpus. And when life enters a corpus, even in a baby, you can see the convulsion. The baby comes alive. Then the Quran speaks about the remapping. Let me just take you to that one. So the siren, that we know, the convulsions, the remapping of old identity to new corporeality, and we will look at all of these now. Repairing preserved personal records, listed there. Revivification of the heart and mind, 79, 8 and 9. And restoration of new senses and new body functions. So if you carefully study the 36 verses and others in the Quran, but some, especially it's very prevalent in the final 36 chapters, not verses, then you are able to almost compile a understanding of how human beings will be brought back to life. Now, obviously, when you are brought back to life and Earth does not have an atmosphere and Earth doesn't have oxygen and Earth doesn't have temperatures that human beings can live in, then you are talking about a different corporeality. Talking about the body being recreated in a different format. Not in the format that we imagine. So a different format. Right? So those are the elements that are explained. Now, before I go to the verses of the Quran, and I can read your mind a bit, and I can see what you're thinking. You're thinking, listen, man, Anwar, what you're trying to do is you're trying to be too literal about these things. What you are doing is you are trying to take something which is actually spiritual and something that is beyond our capacity, and what you are now doing is you are trying to create it in a way that is in our scientific terms. Look, I hear what you might be thinking, I anticipate those thoughts, and I think myself even that yes, maybe it's not completely not what we're saying. But before you rush down that avenue, do consider that we have the Quran, and I'm trying to make sense of the Quran. That's my departure point. It's the verses that I have to make sense of. And the verses are not authored or written for an angel or a creature in heaven. The verses are authored for us. It is there to challenge us as scientists, as ulul albab, of people of reflection, of scholars, and of ordinary people. And so from a perspective where I know a bit about science, where I know a little bit about nature, I am just making sense of the verses. And you know what? If you're a firm believer, you don't need to have the scientific understanding. But remember, we're living in a world where paganism, where disbelief, where atheism is actually the dominant position. And what we need to do is we need to shape the message or phrase the message or the Quran in a way that has meaning even for those who are not believers in the Quran. That is why I'm going down this path. Personally, I do believe it strengthens my own iman, my own faith, to have firm scientific grounds from which to understand and from which to make sense of the Holy Quran. So let us then proceed and look at the verses of the Holy Book. Now, I'm going to take in particular one chapter 78, which is called Buruj. And this particular chapter consists of about 30, 40, I'm not sure, verses. And it covers more or less these topics. But there are also following surahs. I don't think there's the scope to go into all of those. But let me just show you the pattern in these verses. You know, when you look at these final verses, there's a little bit of a pattern going here. In the latter 36 or 32 chapters of the Holy Quran, the surahs often have this pattern. This is the pattern. If you read it, you'll see. It will start out by raising a present times phenomenon. So it will start by speaking about the rain, the water cycle, or agriculture, or the creation of the human being, the forming of the fetus, the zygote, and then the fetus. And so it will often start out by a few verses going or revisiting a very human or earthly phenomenon or process, right? So often it will speak about the water cycle and how the water cycle works, or how the cycle of life works on earth, and how the food cycle operates. So that is what you will always find, and look for that in these chapters. Now, when the Quran, when Almighty Allah, our Lord and Sustainer, has raised a common cycle that we are often ourselves familiar with, He then takes that to move on, and He will then use connected words like, so as true as you see the water coming out of the clouds and bringing the earth to life, so true, and then that connection will be made, so true will be the end of life on earth. Or the Quran or the words will then proceed and say, as true as you were formed as a zygote, and then as a fetus, and then as a small miniaturized human being, and then was born, so true will be the resurrection. So the pattern in these chapters will be the one, raising a present times phenomenon, and then using that to go on to number 2 and 3, the end of life and the end of the earth, and then the resurrection. And then often also it will take it a step further and then take your and use the known phenomenon, one in other words here above, to say that as true as that is, so true will be the new world of fulfillment, which is Jannat, the gardens, the waters, the tranquility, the happiness, the fulfillment. Or the other ugly option is so true as the phenomenon, so true will be that world of suffering and pain, which is Jahannam, the hellfire. And then often in these chapters, in the last 32 chapters of the Holy Quran, it will then explain to you and me how do we avoid number 4 and make sure that we get to number 5. How the former life determines the future life. And then it will list crimes and actions that will get you to the world of pain, to number 4. In other words, it will then say, enriching yourself scandalously without consideration. Wailul lil mutaffifin. So, it will then say that those who are cheating in business, who are fixated on themselves and abandoning the general interests of society, for example, it will condemn them. Or those who crook in, the measuring of goods when they are selling goods, the scales. So often it will then tell you how to avoid it. So it's not as if the Quran is giving you the warning just for the sake of a warning. The warning or the terrible end of time predictions are there for you to reshape your conduct here. Okay, it's time for us to look at the verses then. Let us proceed. And you can follow the pattern that that trying to find this pattern then. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يتساءلون. In the name of Allah, the kind master of all fortunes, do they realize what they are querying? عن النبأ العظيم, no less than the gravest issue. الذي هم فيه مختلفون, about which they are taking a contradictory position. The Quran is speaking about the pagans, those who deny the final judgment. كلا سيعلمون, but most certainly they have come to the realization after these proofs. كلا سيعلمون, undoubtedly they have come to the realization after these proofs. ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا. Now remember, I said, look at number 1 there. We are going to be visiting a common earthly situation. Alam naj'alil arda mihadan, did we then not make the earth life supporting? Wal jibala autada, and the mountains like stakes. Now I want you to know that the Prophet is speaking or narrating these words in 610 of the Common Era. In 612-13 of the Common Era, he's reciting these words to people, and he is saying that the mountains are like pegs or like stakes. The Prophet did not have seismic monitors or geothermal devices or infrared scanning devices. But if you go in Wikipedia now and you type in the earth are the earth pegs, you will be shocked to see that the earth are actually regarded as stakes. the earth are in fact regarded as heavy objects that keep continental drift in check. Because what we do know from science is that the continents are in fact drifting on top of the lower layer of the earth. So the crust of the earth is actually drifting. But that drifting is checked by the mountains, which then dig deep in to the mantle of the earth and restrains that drifting effect of the earth. Now, Allah is great and wise in here. And what we are seeing here is should be thought provoking. So the earth is life supporting, al-mihada, right? And then a surprising fact, Jibala Utada, and the mountains are like stakes, they are like pegs. They keep the earth down, they keep it from moving. It's like a tent, it keeps the overall structure in place. وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, did we not make you in couples? وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا, and made your sleep a means to revitalize. And there's a lot of research done on sleep now. Sleep used to be the most under-researched topic. And the most modern research now on sleep is that sleep is the resetting and the wiring of information in the brain. And sleeping is a core essential aspect of being a healthy person. And made the night وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا, and made the night a cover. So the night covers the reality or the world out there. If night comes, nothing is visible to human eyes, or very little. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا, and made the day an opportunity to forage. وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا, we also constituted above you the sturdy seven. And modern research, we know now that the atmosphere and the biosphere, which is more than the atmosphere, the biosphere includes the protective magnetic layer that is provided by the earth, and that saves us, or that shelters us from cosmic rays, etc., etc. So Allah says here, we have constituted above you the sturdy seven, sab'an shidada, a firm solid canopy that is above our heads in the sky. وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا, and we created a burning light source, which is the sun in the sky. وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا, and from the clouds we release water that flows. So the water falls from the sky, it falls on the highest points, it doesn't fall in the lowest levels. Most rain always occurs high up in the mountains. And so when rain occurs high up in the mountains, it creates the possibility of rivers, of the flow of water. And when rivers flow, when water flows from the high positions to the lower level where the ocean lies, it creates these canals and rivers where life can emerge alongside. And that is where life emerged originally, along rivers. So that with this we bring forth grains, لِلْنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا وَنَبَاتًا, so that with this we bring forth grains and vegetation. So when the rivers flow, then the banks of the rivers become green, and there where the water reaches, it fertilizes the earth, and vegetation and grains become a possibility, and lush gardens. وَجَنَّاتٍ أَلْفَافًا. And now let me show you again. Let me take you back to this. once again, once the present times phenomenon has now been covered, and we are given surprising facts that we would never have realized, that the mountains are pegs, for example, and that the atmosphere is a complex protection. Saba'an Shidada, the protective canopy that the atmosphere and the biosphere presents to us. Interesting facts that the Quran gives us. Now, it makes the segue, and it then says, and so, as we have explained to you these things, as we are offering you these surprising facts, then know therefore that the day of sorting out has been determined. Inna yawmal fasli kana miqata. So Allah makes the segue now, the creator of the universe, our nourish, our sustainer, is saying, now you know what, I've given you these surprising facts. You didn't know that the mountains are pegs, and you didn't know that the atmosphere is a complex shelter for you. It's like a canopy. It keeps harmful radiation from your head. It's like a canopy. It's like something over your head that protects you. It keeps meteorites from falling, because meteorites burn out when they come in the atmosphere. So just as I'm giving you those facts that only the creator of the universe can know in the year 610, so know then that the day of sorting has been determined. And here we come now to the details of that day. The one who told us about the mountains, the one who told us about the atmosphere, who told us about about waters, that one is now going to give us future prophecy, and we can take it to the bank here. That day, يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَتَأْتُونَ أَفْوَاجًا. That day when the alarm is sounded, and you all emerge in mass, فَتَأْتُونَ أَفْوَاجًا, in crowds. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. When heaven is flung open as though it was gated. وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالُ فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. When the mountains are shifted away as if they were mere mirages. Inna jahannama kana mirsada. Remember here we're saying, normally what will happen is you will get, number one, raising a present times phenomenon, then use the surprising fact of these things to prove, if I know this, then surely I can tell you for certainty these other things are also going to happen. And now it is going to talk to us about the new world, the future world of pain. Indeed, the resultant, inna jahannama kana mirsada. Indeed will the resultant blaze of hell be a trap. Now, this concept of hell being a trap, I want to just give you my understanding, is that the reanimated body that you and I will receive, because we will be issued with a new body, which will be created in whatever form. And that new body will be merged with our record, in other words, with our identity, with our life record. So when that body and that life record is merged, then you are you. I'm Anwar again, but your body, your corporeality, the organism that you will inhabit, the biological or whatever suit or body that you will inhabit, will be different for those who were transgressors and those who were restrainers. Those who restrained themselves on earth, who were fair to themselves and to their fellow human beings, who abided by the wishes of the Almighty Creator of the universe. Their restraint will not be, or their body will not be a restraint, will not be an encumbrance. So it will be a suit or a body that will offer them more mobility. And however, the body that the criminal will inhabit will be a dreadful body that will limit them to the fiery world which they will inhabit. So in that fiery world, whether it is, the earth in proximity of the sun, the scorched earth being ablaze, and with the sun burning down on it, that hellful place. So they will inhabit a body that will be trapped in that environment. Then indeed will the resultant blaze of hell be a trap for them. And the destination, لِلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا, and the landing place, the destination of the transgressors. Let's continue. لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا, to dwell in for ages. أحقابا, for ages and ages. لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا, nothing cool will they feel there, nor will they have any drink. إلا حميما وغساقا, except a superheated and a putrid fluid. جزاء وفاقا, that constitute fair compensation. إنهم كان لا يرجون حسابا, they went about life never contemplating eventually giving account. وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا كِذَّابًا, and falsely disputed our directives. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ كِتَابًا, while all the time we preserved a record of all things. فَذُوقُوا فَلَنْ نَزِيدَكُمْ إِلَّا عَذَابًا, go ahead and experience now this penalty. The only advance we offer you is more torture. Oh, may Allah protect us from that. Now we switch. You see, number one, we've raised a few, the Quran has raised a few present time surprising facts and information. It has used it to say so real as that, as real as the mountains that are pegs, and as real as the atmosphere that is a canopy, and as real as the water that rains on the high altitude or high elevated parts of earth and flows down and greens the earth. So real is the end of times, and so real is the world of pain, number 4. And now it will go on and say, so real also is the place of fulfillment. Continuing then, verse 31. Inna lil muttaqina mafaza, verily for the restrained there will be fulfillment. Hadaiqa wa a'naba, gardens and vineyards. Wa kawa'iba atraba, and splendid companions perfectly matched. Wa ka'san dihaqa, and a cup that is filled. لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا, no obscenities do they hear there, nor falsehoods. جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا, all of this being the reward from your Lord, a well-deserved gift. رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا, the Lord and sustain of all the heavens and the earth, and whatever is between them, the master of all fortunes, from whom none of them owns any concession. As we come towards the end of this verse and the end of this episode, let me remind you what we are talking about. We are talking about a message from the cosmos, from the master, from the Rahman, from the master of your fortunes and the master of my fortunes, and the master of all fortunes, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the kind, Ar-Rabb, the sustainer and the Lord, addressing us directly in a written message addressed to you and me, and warning us that the earth will end, but we will not end. we will be brought back to face the consequences of our earthly actions. And we should be restrained in our earthly actions to prevent a negative judgment at the end of time. In the closing few verses of this chapter, let us see how the good master of the universe is introducing himself and just leaving us with this final thought. يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا. On that day, the Spirit and the angels will emerge in formation. None of them will speak except him permitted by the controller of all fortunes, and would then only utter what is fitting. ذلك يوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا. Such will be the day of truth. Let him who chooses, therefore, find refuge in his Lord and Sustainer. Now the closing words. إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. Parting words here from this chapter. We now provided you with a warning of the imminent punishment to come. The day when a person considers his past miserable record, and when he who opposed truth will cry, "Oh no, why did I not remain dust?" Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim. And with gratitude that the Creator, the Master of the Sustainer of the universe, the Lord, my Creator and your Creator, has furnished us with a message of warning, a message of good news. Because the good news in these verses is that if we are restrained sexually, financially, in terms of our anger, in terms of our dealings with other people, if we are not pagan, because pagan means unrestrained, unrestricted, vulgar, wild. If we are not wild and unrestrained and pagans like what we are being taught to be by the mass media, by CNN and by the American soapies and by the mass media that is flooding our TVs and our phones. They are telling us to be unrestrained, be free, do what you like, be crazy, go wild. They are instructing you very, very eloquently on how to go to hell one day. And we, as the people of the book, the people of Allah, the people who take the guidance, we are the people that will end up in the place of Jannah. And let that be a positive message. To be a restrained human being, to be a person that enjoys family, that enjoys love, that enjoys sharing and caring and happiness. Because believe me, the vulgar people are not happy people. Go and look at the suicide rates. Who are the people who die earliest? Are the most vulgar people, are the most absorbed people in drugs, sex, crime, vulgarity. Those are the people that die the youngest. So our book is teaching us not only to be successful in the year after, but to be successful in this world. We thank the Almighty for His guidance. I hope you've maybe become enriched from these few words. Thank you for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.